and then 11 through 15, and then 16 through 20, okay, and then 21 through 25. Okay, all right, let's go ahead.
Okay. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years. And there was a certain man of Zorah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren, and bare not. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto the woman, and said unto her, Behold now, thou art barren, and bearest not, but thou shalt conceive, and bear a son. Now therefore beware, I pray thee, and drink not wine, nor strong drink, and eat not any unclean thing. For lo, thou shalt conceive, and bear a son, and no razor shall come on his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines.
Then the woman came and told her husband, saying, A man of God came unto me, and his countenance was like the countenance of an angel of God, very terrible. But I asked him not whence he was, neither told he me his name. But he said unto me, Behold, thou shalt conceive, and bear a son, and now drink no wine, nor strong drink, neither eat any unclean thing, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah entreated the Lord, and said, O my Lord, let the man of God which thou didst send come again unto us, and teach us what we shall do unto the child and that shall be born. And God hearkened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again unto the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah her husband was not with her. And the woman made haste, and ran, and shewed her husband, and said unto him, Behold, the man hath appeared unto me, that came unto me the other day.
And Manoah arose and went after his wife, and came to the man, and said unto him, Art thou the man that speaketh unto the woman? And he said, I am. And Manoah said, Now that thy words come to pass, how shall we order the child, and how shall we do unto him? And the angel of the Lord said unto Manoah, Of all that I said unto the woman, let her beware. She may not eat of anything that cometh of the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing. All that I commanded her, let her observe. And Manoah said unto the angel of the Lord, I pray thee, let us detain thee until we have made ready the feast.
And the angel of the Lord said unto Manoah, Though thou detain me, I will not eat of thy bread, and if thou wilt offer a burnt offering, thou must offer it unto the Lord. For Manoah knew not that he was an angel of the Lord. And Manoah said, That angel of the Lord, what is thy name? That when thy sayings come to pass, we may do thee honor. And the angel of the Lord said unto him, Why askest thou this after my name, saying, It is a secret? So Manoah took the kid with a meat offering, and offered it upon a rock unto the Lord, and did wondrously, and Manoah and his wife looked on. For it came to pass, when the flame went up toward heaven from off the altar, that the angel of the Lord ascended into the flame of the altar, and Manoah and his wife looked upon it, and fell on their faces to the ground.
But the angel of the Lord did no more appear to Manoah and to his wife. Then Manoah knew that
how long was this child's vow to last? It was for his entire life. It wasn't just for a time. That's what it kind of says in Numbers. It says for the time that was set apart. This one's always for his whole life. So kind of keep that in mind as we continue through this. What did Manoah want to do to honor the man of God? In verse 7. He offered to prepare a meal, for him. Verse 16 makes it clear that Manoah still believed that he was taking a prophet into his house. Let's read verse 16. It says, "And the angel of the Lord said unto Manoah, Though thou detain me, I will not eat of thy bread. If thou wilt offer a burnt offering, thou must offer it unto the Lord. For Manoah knew not that he was the angel of the Lord." He didn't know who this was. He just thought he was a prophet or something like that because he was telling him prophecy, basically. How did the angel respond when Manoah asked for his name? Verse 17 and 18. He asked for his
Why are
name.
you asking my name? Because it's a secret.
Yeah, it's a secret.
Secret.
He says he was not willing to share it, telling Manoah it was a secret. Have students. Okay, yeah, this is my notes right here. So the word secret, it just kind of was an idea that he was wondering maybe why he kept it a secret. We don't from just looking at it from the outside. Why would this person think it's a secret? Because he's an angel, obviously. Manoah didn't know that, obviously, because he thought he was a prophet. The point is that the name is one that would be full of wonder and beyond comprehension, reflecting God's character. This was, in fact, God. It says it was the Lord, the angel of the Lord. This is why his name was a secret, because God fully wasn't revealed at that time. He was more revealed in the New Testament, but that's why. So how did Manoah and his wife respond to seeing the angel ascend? Verse 20. Yeah, they fell on their faces on the ground in a posture of worship and fear. Who was the angel of the Lord, and how do we know? Kind of what I already said. The text clearly indicates that this was indeed the Lord. The name being withheld from receiving of the offering and ascending with the sacrifice all point to this identity. Then Manoah's fear of death upon recognition that he had seen God makes the identity certain. This is the same fear Gideon had, having seen the angel of the Lord face to face, as you would have seen last time. After Samson's birth, how does Judges 13, 24, and 25 describe how God was involved in his life? What happened because of this? Verses 24 and 25. How did God work in his life at this point?
The Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to move at times.
Yeah, exactly. God blessed him as he grew, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him. Remember, it says began to stir him in times in the camp of Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. So basically, when he was a young child, even as a young child, you could see this. Probably when you saw him, you look at him, you see this difference about him. You can see that the Spirit of God is kind of working on him and working through him. He's already starting to show these little things here and there that aren't normal maybe for a kid his age. In the face of oppression by the Philistines, God was once again bringing a deliverer to his people. Despite their rebellion, God had a promise to keep his mercy and his rebellious people. God had a promise to keep his mercy to his rebellious people was a continuing reminder that he had promised thousands of years earlier to send a Savior to crush evil. In the narrative with Samson's parents, God brought a promise to send a deliverer in an immediate situation. But this is a shadow of what will ultimately come in Jesus. And God's grace is evident in Samson as he grows and is blessed by God. Even when receiving the work of the Holy Spirit to stir him to action. Now we're going to move through the rest of the narrative by looking at some select passages. Samson's life is filled with moments of great victory you think that he was really strong?
Yes.
Yeah, he was really, really strong. And he had multiple events here in Judges that we can look at. And that's what we're going to look at real quick. Let's start with Judges 14, 1 through 7. Who wants to read Judges 14, 1 through 7? Brother Bill.
And Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. And he came up and told his father and his mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath of the daughter of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me to wife. Then his father and his mother said unto him, Is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren, or among all my people, that thou goest to seek, take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said unto his father, Get her for me, for she pleaseth me well. But his father and his mother knew not that it was of the Lord that he sought an occasion against the Philistines, for at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. Then went Samson down and his father and his mother to Timnath, and came to the vineyards of Timnath, and behold, a young lion roared against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he rent him as he would have rent a kid. And he had nothing in his hand, but he told not his father or his mother what he had done. And he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well.
Well, the first thing I want to note, which is not in my notes really, when I was reading through this, do you get the idea that maybe his parents were kind of pushovers? I'm kind of thinking that because his father and his mother said unto him, Is there never a woman in the daughters of thy brethren or among thy people that thou goest and take a wife? They are his parents. I think that they probably got the idea that, oh, this is just God's blessing. This is the man of God. This is just the Spirit of God's working in him, so he's going to be good. But it turns out, even when that happened, you still need mom and dad there, and you still need a real mom and dad that are gonna correct you when you're wrong. And that's what really should have happened all the way from the beginning. But I don't see that here. So just kind of one thing I noticed. Whom did Samson want to marry? Who did he want to marry? Philistine woman, that's right. What was Samson's motive? What was his motive? She pleaseth me well. This is likely a statement of desire for a beautiful woman, since he saw her and asked for her to be his wife. I'm just going to say, a lot of times when you look for things in people, you're not you look on the outward things. That's what we judge by. That's not what God judges by. As we see later when Samuel's judging and trying to get the right king for Israel, he looks to all these people, all these goodly-looking people. That's not what we're looking for. That's not what God is looking at. He's looking at the heart, and that is not what he should have been looking at either. And again, I say, if his parents probably raised him well, they would have just told him no and slapped him. Probably that would have been.
Amen.
Maybe I was raised a little bit.
No, you're not.
What was God's plan in this marriage? What was God's plan? Verse 4. Yes. God intended to create a situation to oppose the Philistines who were opposing Israel. How was Samson able to tear apart the young lion? How was he able to tear apart the young lion?
Bare hands.
Yeah, he was with his bare hands, but what happened? What enabled him to do that?
Spirit of the Lord.
The Spirit of the Lord. Still, you see that Spirit of the Lord upon him. And right now, you don't see it, but later you'll see a symbol of the strength that he has. Judges 14, 18 through 15, 8. Okay, Samson arranged the marriage and went to the wedding in the bride's city, holding a 7-day feast. During that time, he presented a riddle to the men of that city. Samson gave into the pressure of his bride, and she gave the answer to the men. Upsetting Samson, here is what happened in Judges 14, 18 through 15, 8. And I'll read it for you guys. It says, And the men of the city said unto him on the 7th day before the sun went down, and what is sweeter than honey, and is stronger than a lion? He said unto them, If ye had not plowed with my heifer, ye had not found out my riddle. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and slew 30 men of them, and took their spoil, and gave charge of garments unto them which expounded with the riddle. And his anger was kindled, and he went up to his father's house. But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had used as a friend. But it came to pass within a while after in that time of wheat harvest that Samson visited his wife with a kid, which is a goat. He said, I will go in to my wife into the chamber, but her father would not suffer him to go in. Her father said, I verily thought that thou hadst utterly hated her, therefore I gave her to thy companion. If not her younger sister fairer than she, is not her younger sister fairer than she? Take her, I pray thee, instead of her. And Samson said concerning them, now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. And Samson went and caught up 300 foxes, and took firebrands, and turned tail to tail, and put firebrand in the midst between two tails. And when he had set the brands on fire, he let them go to the standing corn of the Philistines, and burnt up both the shocks and also the standing corn with the vineyards and olives. Okay. Then the Philistines said, who hath done this? And they answered, Samson, the son of Timnite, because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. And Samson said unto them, though ye have done this, yet will I be avenged, and avenged of you, and after that I will cease. And he smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and he went down and dwelt in the top of the rock Edom. And by the way, that in there, hip and thigh means he's basically thoroughly smote them. he basically just slaughtered them. So in this passage, you can see back and forth sequence. What did the power of what power did Samson act against 30 Philistines? In verse 14, or chapter 14, verse 19. In
Spirit of the Lord.
Spirit of the Lord, it's the same spirit that we see that started even before he was born. The same phrase, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, is used to describe God's empowering of Samson. What did the Philistines do in relation to Samson's revenge? Verse 15, or verse 6, rather.
They killed his wife and father
Yeah,
with fire.
they burned his father and daughter. Yep. Kind of interesting. Again, you can see that. I mean, you realize that he just went and caught 300 foxes and lit their tails on fire after tying them together, and then they ran into the corn and the wheat and the vineyards of the Philistines. I don't know how to catch foxes very much, but I just can't imagine anyone really doing that in a short period of time without someone else's outside help. So I figured that was the Spirit of the Lord as well doing that. And by the way, that's some crazy revenge. That's like brother to brother revenge right there. Some comedy relief in the Bible. Judges 15, 14 through 16. In this passage, you can see this back and forth sequence beginning to shape with Samson and the Philistines. Samson sought some refuge in Judah, but the men of Judah took him captive and turned him over to the Philistines, who had camped against them in Lehi. Let's read Judges 15, 14 through 16. Who would like to read that? 15 verses 14 through 16. Want to do it? Okay.
14.
Yep, 14 through 16.
And when he came unto Lehi,
You know, I get the image, like, when I think of Samson, I sometimes think of this big, like, jacked, absolutely ripped dude. He's as huge, his arms can't even touch his hips because he's just got so big biceps and stuff. You know, it probably wasn't that. It was the Spirit of the Lord's power, that, you know, that empowered him. It wasn't his own strength, and he didn't look like it either. I imagine that's what it, like, I think that he's this big jacket. He's probably not. He's probably just this lean man. But he does all these mighty works, and people are just amazed by him. And you'll see why also later that's probably a good idea, that he was just a regular looking man. What was Delilah's? Oh wait, so that's a little bit farther. So what encouragement can we find in this Spirit empowering Samson, even in the midst of his questionable character? What encouragement can we find in in the Spirit empowering Samson, even in the midst of his questionable character? Yes. Even when you are not living right, questionable character, as I said, God still loves you, and he can still empower you, even though you're not doing what's right. He loves his children. And that's exactly what you are. You are his children. We have the hope that the Spirit will work in us even when we go through times of running from God. Now we're going to have someone read chapter 16, verses 4 through 6. So we're introduced to another woman Samson pursued. Chapter 16, 4 through 6. Who would like to read that? Bill? Okay.
And it came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came upon her and said with her, entice him, and see wherein his great strength lieth, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and he will give thee every one of us 1,100 pieces of silver. And Delilah said to Samson, tell me, I pray thee, wherein thy great strength lieth, and wherewith thou mightest be bound to afflict thee. One more.
4 through 6. Oh, you got it. You're done. That's good. What was Delilah's motive in finding the source of Samson's strength?
Riches.
Yeah, it's the great reward of silver from the Philistines, as it says in verse 5. You know, whenever I was in college, I was at work at one time, and I saw all this happening, all this stuff that was happening that was clearly just sin, and it shouldn't have happened at work. And people were just talking bad against me. And I talked to my roommate later about it, and I just remembered that he just reminded me that the world is going to act like the world. So don't be surprised when something like that happens. If you're a man of God, as questionable character, as I said, man of God, and you are a Christian, don't expect the world to act any different anywhere else than even your home. The world will act just like it is. Also, and the motivation isn't to please you. The world's motivation is not to get anybody else's benefit of their own, which is exactly what it says, the reward of silver from the Philistines. Chapter 16, 18 through 31. Similarly, the first woman trying to pry the riddle out of Samson, Delilah pleaded with Samson to tell her the source of his strength. He lied to her 3 times, rising up to thwart the plans of the Philistines to capture him. But after she pressed him daily, and his soul was vexed to death, as it says, he revealed his vow and the fact that the razor had never touched his head as part of the Nazirite vow. Let's see how that remainder of Samson's life played out in Judges 16, verses 18 through 31. Can we get some people to read that? So we get 18 through 22. 18 to 23. 18 to 23, and then 24 through 28, I think. 4 through 5 to 6 to 7. Yeah. Just trying to get 5 verses. 24 through 28. Okay, and then the last of it is 29 through 31. Let's read that. 28 through. So you're 18 through 22. 23, rather. Sorry, guys. 23, and then 23 through 29.
came to pass when their hearts were merry that they said, "Call for Samson, that he may make us sport." And they called for Samson out of the prison house, and he made them sport, and they set him between the pillars. And Samson said unto the lad that held him by the hand, "Suffer me that I may feel the pillars whereupon the house standeth, that I may lean upon them." Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And there were upon the roof about 3,000 men and women that beheld, while Samson made sport. And Samson called unto the Lord and said, "O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen me, I pray thee. Only this once, O God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes."
And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars upon which the house stood, and on which it was borne up, of the one with his right hand, and of the other with his left. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And he bowed himself with all his might, he bowed himself with all his might, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people that were within therein. So the dead which he slew at his death were more than they which he slew in his life. Then his brethren and all the house of his father came down and took him, and brought him up, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol, in the burying place of Manoah his father, and he judged Israel 20 years.
What a dynamic ending, though, to that story. Why did Samson fail to defeat the Philistines? Why did he? What happened to him? It wasn't his hair, it was the Lord departed from him. The Spirit of the Lord was gone now. You see, the things that, even just here, basically, I'm just trying to prove this, but this is a symbol of him. This is a symbol of his power, is his hair. That's not what the power was. It's just a symbol of it. Kind of like how baptism is a symbol of salvation. It's not how we are saved, but it is something that we're commanded to do, first of all, but it is something that kind of shows, it proves to the world, this is, I'm saved, and I'm identifying with all around me that I'm saved, and this is what identified him. It was his hair. How did the Philistines humble him? In verse 21. Took his eyes, how they bound him, gouged out his eyes, and then forced him to push a grinding wheel in prison. What symbol, like I said earlier, what was symbol of his strength that used in this passage? It was his hair. His hair was a symbol. He did not lose the strength merely because his hair was cut out. However, but because he was not faithful. Verse 22 foreshadows the return of Samson's strength as his hair began to grow in prison. Whom did the Philistines credit with the victory? Dagon, their god. You can kind of see that man always has a need to praise something or worship something, and that was what it was for them. Just kind of a side note there, but you always see that in the world, even just with us. We don't bow down to a god or worship a god, but we are always subject to something. And even of the world, they are still subject to whatever. How did they celebrate? Verses 23 through 27. It says they gathered a crowd of more than 3,000, began drinking, and called for Samson to entertain them. That's exactly what it says, really. What did Samson ask God for? Verse 28. Yeah, he asked God to remember him and to strengthen him one last time. You can see again, this isn't his hair. But even though it says his hair was growing back, again, that symbol was still there, but it wasn't his hair that gave him the power. It was God. It was the Spirit of the Lord. What did Samson mean by remember me? What did he mean by that?
Come back to me and give me power again.
Yeah. It says this phrase means more than God merely acknowledging him, but for God to act on his behalf. We see this same idea in passages like Psalm 106, verse 4, and then Jeremiah 15:15. This is a form of repentance, especially since Samson used God's covenant name, Yahweh, to call him out. So he wasn't saying, I'm going to do this with my own strength again. He was calling for God in humility. What was Samson's desire in this act? Is to avenge himself. So this kind of, it almost, when you look at it from that perspective, it sounds like it's a kind of self-centered, I'm going to avenge myself, but that's not what he meant. He asked for vengeance, for his eyes to be gouged out. It seems like a selfish admonition, but he also acknowledged that he would die in the act of revenge. So he didn't see it as him getting benefit out of it. He knew he was going to die. How did Samson acknowledge the source of his strength? He asked God for the strength, and he demonstrated humility before God. It was humility because, like I said, he knew he was going to die. So it wasn't out of his own vengeful mind. Maybe that may have been part of it, but God was going to get the glory because it wasn't about him. He figured out that it was about God. And ultimately, just praying to God, he realized that it's not about him. He prayed to God first.
Also, they were worshiping their God and making their God bigger than God.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big precursor to him pushing that. Is that God says, you're not going to have anybody bigger than me.
Yeah. That was kind of the rule of the judges. The judges came there to push out the evil worship against false gods. And that's like it's the cycle that we see. God sends a judge when they're in time of toil and they're in time of just judgment because of their sin. He sends a judge. They get right with him, or this big dramatic thing happens, and Israel is saved. And then they start repenting, and then they go back and they fall back into worshiping other gods. And that's kind of what you see all the way through the judges. But really, I think it comes down to God. There should be no other gods before me. It's really that's just his motive behind it. And so he sends people to help them. In spite of his failings, Samson was used by God to accomplish his plan to bring judgment on the Philistines. If we think back to chapter 14, Samson's parents thought nothing good would come out of this first marriage, but the Lord sought an occasion against the Philistines. Even as Samson fraternized with the enemy, God was at work to bring out his plan to judge the Philistines who were oppressing his people. I have an activity for us to do. It's called Samson's Failings. And let's see. You'll find Samson's Failings activity in your student guide. Take a few minutes to look through these sets of pages given here and answer the questions at the end. We will discuss them together for a few minutes. So if I get someone to maybe help me pass these around as well. Yeah. Okay, thank you. You want to get you hand those, Levi? That'd be good.
PJ,
Yeah.
you ever think about how big that building was when he pulled down? It has 3,000 people in it.
Yeah, it had to have been massive. So it kind of gives you maybe an estimate of how strong, not even the full amount of the strength that God gave him, but if the building could hold 3,000 people, and it didn't just say it was on the ground, it was on the building and around the building, and it just crushed it all. I wonder if it was like one of those like Jericho moments where God divinely just like made the wall just kind of domino all the way around. I kind of wonder if it was like that because there was a lot of people there. I can't foresee just all this going on one spot. Thank you. All right, so take a few minutes to do this. If you want help, grab a neighbor just to want to go and cross-reference these and take a look at them. And then follow the instructions on them. We'll just take a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll talk about it. So I guess I'll read the top of the paper. So what the scripture records of Samson offers us little to emanate and much to turn away from it. Examine the passages below to understand how Samson's life compared to God's revealed will for his life. For each passage, write a brief summary of how Samson violated God's commands, then answer the question. I have one here. Here we go. So, like I said, just take a few minutes to do that, and we will talk about it here in a minute. looks like we're going and looking back at the law and seeing what exactly he did wrong. Give you all one more minute to finish up your last. Not gonna get them done. Yeah, there's not. We'll discuss it either way, but you'll see. See what you guys get. All right, we'll get going here. See, you probably didn't get all of them. There is like, I don't know, there's a few there. There's probably 6 there you need to get, but that's okay. If you want to take it home later and finish it up, you can, but we'll discuss what you may have found thus far. Let's review what you've found in the passages, Judges 14:1 and Deuteronomy 7:3-4. What did you find? Anybody look at that one? Go ahead.
I think part of it was that the Hebrew people were warned many times not to get involved with heathen people. It wouldn't turn out good,
Mm-hmm.
especially the men and women situation. But
Yeah. So the Israelites were not to marry people of the other land, though the Philistines are not specifically mentioned, so that they were not led into idolatry. Samson sought to marry a pagan woman despite his parents' warning. Did anybody else get any other kind of truth out of that, maybe, out of that passage, or is just kind of that covered it all? Yeah. Yeah. And if I remember right, you see that.
I'm speaking outside of his people, outside of his
Yeah.
religious belief. Let's say that.
Probably. Hopefully.
Wrong word. Sorry, y'all. I didn't mean that word. I know.
Judges 14, 8 to 9, and then Leviticus 2 or 5 2. What'd you guys all get from that? Yeah, and that's also in the, say, Numbers 6, that what we read earlier. All this is kind of in Numbers 6 a little bit, kind of as the vow goes, but that's what one of the things was to not touch any dead bodies. Do you have something, Bill?
Well, I just was say, took this honey out of an unclean animal, and if you go to Leviticus 5:1, story about not using unclean food, unclean animals, uncleanness,
Yeah.
so he was sinning.
Yeah. And so after when the New Testament, New Law came about, that wasn't a problem, but this was their law at the time, and that was something he violated, especially being a judge or one of the judges that God sent. It was a big deal. Yeah, and it was a big deal. So, yeah, I'm just kind of saying that. Yeah. And then, like I said, it's also in that chapter 6 of Numbers that we saw that already. We saw that was kind of one of the big emphasis in verse 6 and verse 7 about not touching anything that was dead or associating yourself with it at all. So, yeah, he wasn't supposed to be associated with anything that had to do with any wine or anything like that, along the lines of that at all. It's kind of interesting because he is, as far as I know, one of the only people in the Bible that took that vow all the way through his life. He was supposed to, and that was his life commitment vow. Never cut his hair, never touch anything dead, never go to wine, never do this or that. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Judges 16:1 and Leviticus 18:20. Did anybody get to that one? Or Bill?
Yeah, it says this, Samson went to Gaza, where he met a harlot, went with it to her, but yet in Leviticus, it says, Leviticus 19, 18, 20, I got blinded again. Thou shalt not lie carnally with thy neighbor's wife, to defile thyself. So, first, another sin that he was doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my book says this prohibition is specifically against adultery, but Samson was violating God's will by having a sexual relationship with a woman he was not married to. So you see even that today, this kind of some application. You're not supposed to be hanging around, laying around with people that aren't your wife or husband, even if you're not married. And I think he actually was technically married. Kind of. Oh yeah, she died, that's right. Well, he was not married, and then all the more reason for application today. So, anybody get to Judges 16:10, 6 and 13, and then Leviticus 19:11? Did anybody get to that one or not? If you all were smart, you would have worked backward, and you would have. No. Yes, not supposed to lie. Samson repeatedly lied to Delilah, violating God's command to speak truth, and then. Read Hebrews 11:32-38, which is the description of, by the way, this is the Hall of Faith, which description would seem to apply to Samson. He escaped the edge of the sword, made strong out of weakness, and bounds and imprisonment. And then how is it that Samson can be set as a model of faith when he was so disobedient to God in these three instances? How can this be? He was a pillar of faith. He was in the hall of faith, as we call it in Hebrews 11. When you see all this evil that he did, even as a judge of Israel, how can he be an example to us? What do you guys think? Go for it.
It's not a good racial thing, okay?
Okay.
But he was a man that God chose to do something. But as just being a man, he sinned. To show us there's no perfect man. For God to still take those imperfect people.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, you had one?
But he also recognized that being with God, that he meant he was part of Israel.
Yeah.
He was able to bring deliverance.
Yeah, he did have faith in God at the end. I think that's what Hebrews says, is that he did have that faith in him. It's called the Hall of Faith for a reason, but yeah, he ended up having to trust God because he could not do it himself. He had to rely on the Spirit of God. Brother Wayne.
I like the part of the case where in the end his life was over, he realized he really messed up.
Mhm.
He did not want to even God or God praise. He would rather die than he did. So the true and living God would get the honor over him.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing for that.
Yeah, exactly. And he, like I said, he realized he couldn't depend on his own strength to do that, to bring an end to the worshipers of this evil god, these bad people, as it were. Yeah. It says also, it is God's grace in our lives that allows us to be pleasing to him. God was pleased to work through Samson despite all of his failings. Same with us. He's still pleased to work in his child. How does your answer to the question above help you understand your role as a servant of God? How does it help you understand it? How does it apply to you? Starla.
Even when I mess up and I'm trying to be strong on my own, God is still there.
Yeah.
And I just need to cry out to him humbly, and he'll answer.
Yeah. And isn't it kind of amazing that through his life, it seems like his whole life was a mess up, in a way. God chose this man that was just bad, and I do say his parents probably had some effect in that, but he was still had no excuse because he knew who he was and what he was supposed to be in his vow. But it's amazing that all through, even the bad things, the questionable choices as he made, God still empowered him to do those things that would be called evil. Each of us is imperfect in our service to God, yet he chooses to use us for his own purposes. Here's some application that I got for you guys. The account of Samson is one that it probably leaves us with some questions, but it seems a bit messy, and there's not many positive things said about Samson. But God chose this man, even revealing himself to Samson's parents to announce his birth. A barren woman is visited by the sovereign Lord of the universe so that she can bear a special son who will save his people. This son was to be set apart from even conception and meant to remain pure through his whole life. I trust you can hear the echoes of Jesus in this description. Samson was a man who gave himself to his lust rather than obeying God. But God was still pleased to use him to accomplish his plans. And we must agree with Hebrews 11 that Samson was a man of faith, whether we can see it constantly displayed or not. But even as the Israelites look to Samson for deliverance, we can look to Jesus. Even when we've failed to live lives worthy of the calling which we have been called, God can still use us, and he will for his glory. It's not about you. If you remember, one of my first sermons that I preached up here about who am I? One of the first things that was said, who you are, is you are chosen. You are chosen. You have been chosen. Everyone has, by the way, not just Christians. Everyone has been chosen to be saved. If you're chosen, you are God's. If after you're saved, you are God's child, and he won't forget you. He will always be with you. He will always help you. And he wants to see you do what's right. Even in your bad choices and your bad things, it's not something that we should be wanting to do. We shouldn't be wanting God's help in everything. I mean, we should, but we shouldn't be needing God's help in everything because we're sinners, and we shouldn't be wanting that sin. That's not what is the characteristic of a Christian. We should be living for the Lord. We should be in the work of the Lord, as he says. So yeah, this is it's a good lesson that we can kind of take from here. Yeah. I do have some questions for you at the end. So how did God use Samson's weakness to bring about his plans? Just give me some thought questions here. How did God use Samson's weakness to bring about his plans?
If he went and captured him and had him at that place, then the ending couldn't have happened.
Yeah. One example that we can include is how Samson's lust for women was women to create situations where Samson would bring vengeance on the Philistines. Yeah, exactly. There's one of the things that even this bad that happened, it still brought God glory because he was fulfilling the purpose that he had all the way from birth.
And it still got him in trouble because he got his eyes gouged out.
Yeah, he still suffered for it. Yeah. And that's kind of something interesting. God's going to humble you whenever you are not doing right. He will humble you, I'm telling you. I've have it happen to me. When I was at school, I had a bad week. I got into a car wreck and then had to go to the hospital because I had appendicitis, and I had a vet, and I was like, why is all this happening to me? All right at the end of the semester when I had to finish paying my school bill when I'm not going to have money for it. And I was just kind of downhearted at that point. But why is all this happening to me? I was working like 40-hour weeks and 20 hours of school classes, and not to mention all the study time that I would have to have. It was just, when you aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're not focusing on the right thing, God's going to humble you in one way or another. And he's going to, by the way, he gave me the time I needed to study a lot more. An extra 40 hours to study with, so that was nice. Yeah, exactly. Samson was a man who was sent to be a deliverer for Israel, as much as Jesus was sent to be a deliverer. How does Jesus compare to Samson as a deliverer of his people? How does Jesus compare to Samson as a deliverer of his people?
Jesus had no sin, so that's a big comparison.
Yeah, Jesus was perfect. He wasn't like Samson in that way. But both were set apart from birth, all the way from birth, and sacrificed their lives. But there are significant differences. Jesus was faithful to God in the face of temptations, whereas Samson failed. Samson was a flawed leader, while Jesus was sinless. In what way can you find encouragement in the account of Samson? What can you find encouragement in the account of Samson? We've already discussed a little bit of it, but
When you fall, know which way to look to get back.
yeah,
And always look to your Savior for your deliverance from all things.
yeah, that's good. That's good.
And God's works will still follow through, no matter if you
Yep.
fall short or not.
Yep, God loves you as his child no matter what you do. That love never changes, by the way. We're going to see that a little bit later this evening, but that love never changes. Even as you grow old, God doesn't grow old that way. It only gets bigger and bigger and bigger to you. And it's always there. God's always there to receive you. So let's go forth even through the rest of this Sunday and then through the week, kind of remembering that, okay? Can I get someone to close us in prayer? That would be great. Who'd like to close us in prayer? Actually, I'll just get Brother Fred to do it. Fred, close us in prayer, please.